Hello, everyone. This is Sergio Marrero, and we are here with another episode of RBL1 Live. We have another amazing founder and CEO joining us this evening, Viveka Hulyalkar, who is CEO of Beam Impact. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks so much, Sergio. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, excited for you to be here. Just to share a little bit about Viveka's background. She's a graduate of Brown University, focusing on poli-sci. She was one of the Forbes 30 under 30 for this year. A passion for impact, serving in the United Nations, and has been a professor, worked in McKinsey, or adjunct professor, worked at McKinsey, and now founder of Beam Impact. So if we turn it over to you, can you share with the audience, what is Beam Impact?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that intro. So Beam is on a mission to shift $10 billion from brands to high impact nonprofits by creating what loyalty would look like if it were designed for today's customers. So we're building a network of mission-led brands like IKEA, Dig In and restaurants, Frankie Collective, and D2C apparel. And we let you donate 1% of what you spend anywhere across our network to a nonprofit that you choose from a curated set designed to fit the brand's values and operations. So for you as a customer, there's no extra cost. And you can choose a nonprofit either in cart while checking out or through our app, which is a totally separate thing. And then you can track your impact towards goals you can see with every purchase on order confirmation, like removing 1,000 pounds of plastic from the ocean or funding a week.
I won't show you
Girl. What we see is that this sets up a dynamic where young people are visiting our partners more and more often, not only because they want to see their impact grow, but also because they're emotionally invested in what the brand stands for. So for brands, we're able to drive higher quality loyalty than any other solution on the market because we see customers spending 20% more per transaction and visiting twice as often per month within just 2 months in high purchase frequency retail. And we're creating loyalty for customers who identity shop, not just price shop. So that's the high level overview of what we're doing. And in the process, we're also catalyzing customers to do more for the issues that matter to them in their everyday lives. So we see that 70% of consumers who use our platform go on to support the nonprofits they support in other ways too, with their own time, money, and voice, as we're building everyday feedback loops around giving. And they see, I really can do a lot, and a little bit goes a long way every day.
That's amazing. Glad you began to share a little bit more of that story. Can you share with the audience what inspired you to start Beam Impact?
Definitely. So one of the first seedlings was a really long time ago when I was 15, and I'm from Cleveland. That's where I am right now. I'm normally based in New York, but I'm here in my parents' home office at the moment. And so I'd started an environmental nonprofit, and the number one way to promote anything in Cleveland is to try to partner with the Cavs. It's all about LeBron, even now. He's over on the Lakers having a great time. But I just cold called a number I found online, and one thing led to another, and the NBA ended up sponsoring us. And we installed $1 million worth of solar panels in local schools within a year. And it happened way faster than I ever thought it would. And I realized that brands I loved were actually already giving so much to things I cared about. And I had zero idea as a consumer, and neither did any of my friends. And fast forward after college, I was working as a consultant at McKinsey, but I went there because I wanted to build the skills and toolkit to start a real company. And I was working with lots of retailers who were all struggling to hang on to young customers with anything other than just constant flash sales. And flash sales are great at driving people in the door once, but they really erode brand equity, they erode margins, and they set up a really transactional dynamic where young people especially are great at gaming them. Like, I know that a lot of people won't buy anything until they wait for it to go on sale, myself included sometimes. But during that work, I learned that 70% of consumers would actually pay more for a brand they believe is more socially responsible. This is 18 to 34-year-olds specifically, because they're so anxious to make a bigger impact, especially with their dollars, that they'd even invest more in doing so. So if you can appeal to that side of a customer in an authentic way, it's a completely different dynamic. And from my experience, I knew that there are tons of brands out there that are actually walking the walk and investing a lot in issues that matter to them and not just paying lip service. But it's really hard to tell which ones are actually doing that. And as it turns out, in the US, retailers are spending $4 billion a year on corporate philanthropy, even more trying to publicize their giving than on the giving itself. And still, 89% of consumers say they have no idea about any of the giving programs for the brands they support. So at this point, I was obsessed with this idea that we could turn corporate philanthropy, this existing resource, into an engine of loyalty to make the most mission-driven brands out there win and drive every brand to want to be like them. And through friends of friends, I knew to make this real, I needed a technical co-founder. I was bothering everyone in my life, trying to figure out who the engineers I knew were. Through friends of friends, I ended up connecting with my co-founder, Alex, who's amazing. And she was an early engineer at Tinder. And together we were thinking about how can we make impact part of people's everyday lives to show people also that you really do have the power to make an impact on an everyday basis through your spending power. So that was really what got us started. From there, we started doing some alpha pilots on the side. I can tell you more about that. Demand validation on both the B2B side and the B2C side, harassing lots of strangers for feedback. But that's really where the seedlings came from in terms of the concept itself.
Great. I'm glad you shared a little bit more of that story. And for those that are just tuning in and hearing about the origins of Beam Impact, at least now, you've raised, Viveka's raised 2.2 million from institutional partners such as Ulu Ventures, Hearst Labs, Brilliant Ventures, and Amble Partners. But I want to, before we get there about how you did that, I want to go back to the messy beginning. From this is a concept. I think that we can do better in where we're putting our donation dollars in moving nonprofits forward. And how did you get those first proof points, those active customers, and hack the first versions of Beam Impact?
Oh yeah, we did all kinds of ridiculous stuff. But yeah, I would say that in case there are any aspiring founders watching, one thing that was really helpful for me then when we were first thinking about even evaluating if Beam was a viable concept, and has continued to be helpful, has always been reverse engineering our goals. So through my alumni network in college, and by reaching out to colleagues and asking if they knew anybody in VC, I connected with several VCs when I was still at McKinsey and just contemplating this idea. And I asked them, in terms of, you evaluate companies all the time, what are the proof points you would need to see in order for me to raise a seed round at a median valuation in New York as a SaaS company? And they told me you would need, 5 partners and X number of users as a B2B2C company. So that laid down the gauntlet for me. And from there, I needed to, before I quit my job, I wanted to prove out there was actually demand. That set up a framework in my mind where I knew that I needed to prove that there's actually demand on the B2B side and the B2C side. And, I would suggest to any aspiring founder to always talk to a user before you ever talk to an engineer, in terms of making sure that there is really something there. So
that's a great piece of advice.
Thanks. And if you are an engineer, obviously talk to a user before you build anything. And so from there, what we did is I reached out to a franchisee of Panera who happened to be on the board of my high school, and asked him, would you give me feedback on a business concept that I'm thinking about? And I talked to him about it, and he said, this really has legs. This is something that you should build because we need it. And from there, I paid a student at Brown like $300. This was before I ever connected with Alex, by the way. $300 to build like a really minimal alpha version of the product. The worst possible thing, honestly, but it's not worth investing in a product until you have demonstrated that there's a real need for it and it would create value. But it had, 4 buttons and a number. It enabled people to choose a nonprofit and then see their total number of donations go up. And we tested this in 4 locations of Panera. I stood there 16 hours a day harassing people walking in and telling them like, hey, let me set you up with this beta version of this product and you can make it part of what you're spending today, go to a nonprofit. And what ended up being really exciting to Panera is that customers at these 4 locations actually would go to other places and ask other stores, why can't I use Beam here? Like, I've used Beam at Panera before. I want to be able to use Beam here. And we saw that they were spending more, coming more often with a really, really minimal version of the product. So that to me was the first indicator that, hey, this is working. And we got excitement from Panera and they were interested in expanding into more locations. So to me, this meant I need a CTO. I need to now be doing things to make this a more real company. So I would say talking to, even before you think about, getting investment, et cetera, it's important to demand validate to see if it should even be a company. In that process, I also did surveys with 800 Gen Y and Z customers, much of that actually when Alex and I connected. So we sent out Google forms to random Facebook groups to make sure we were talking to people who were nowhere near our social circle. We stood in coffee shops and we talked to people and offered them candy to talk to us for 5 minutes to tell us about what they thought about the brands they were shopping from, et cetera. And we heard from tons of people that nobody ever felt like they were doing enough to make an impact. The number one way they wish they could do more was through their spending power, but they had no idea which brands were giving and which ones weren't. And we also heard that they were so concerned about making a bigger impact, they were actually just disengaging from the news because they were saying, I'm deleting news apps because I'm so concerned about everything going on. And to us, that meant that there was something much bigger at stake because this concern could be such a powerful resource to move the world forward. And people just had to disengage from social issues for their own self-preservation. So we learned a few things in that process. There was massive appetite for more everyday ways to make a difference. People felt like the regularity of their capacity to make an impact was not there. They said the things I can do that really move the needle are voting, donating, volunteering. How often can I do that? And what I can do every day is tweeting. What's that actually going to accomplish? So accessibility and tangibility of impact were inversely related. We also realized we were solving a real B2B need. So from there, we decided this really has legs. We contracted on the side for a while to make sure that, test the waters of our relationship because it's such a massively important relationship. Alex quit her job, moved to New York, was living on my sofa for a while. And then from there, we started approaching people that we knew. Our early adopters as clients were people that were leaders in social giving. And we told them, look, this is clearly part of who you are. Let us make it the reason that you win every time. And people come to get coffee from you over the place next door. Like, let us create a return on this investment you're already making. So they really had nothing to lose. We started out by offering this for free and we built in tiers. Like, if we were to drive this many customers to you, this is how much it would cost per month from day one, which was very helpful because then that enabled us. I think a problem that a lot of companies have is being able to monetize companies. They were providing it for free before. But through that process, we were able to get to monetize partners and hit our goals. They got their customers on the platform when they saw that people who used Beam were spending more and coming more often. So they had a material incentive to get their customers on the platform. So that's how we reached, the critical milestone that we had pre-established of X number.
And what was that critical milestone for you guys? The first round?
Yeah, for us it was 5 brands and something like 1,200 users on our native app we wanted before we raised a seed round. So once we had surpassed that, we knew that we were not going to be wasting our time having conversations. And then we were also able to come back to VCs and say, hey, we've accomplished this. This is the gauntlet you laid down for us, and this is what we've accomplished.
Amazing. And I know you spoke about Alex a few times. Who's Alex for the audience that they don't know? I know who Alex is, but go ahead.
Alex Sadhu is my co-founder and CTO. She was an early engineer at Tinder. She is incredible. She was recruited by their first CEO, elected to their strategy committee to represent the engineering team. She is so incredibly inspiring. She has a background working with mental health nonprofits and sustainability on campus at Tufts. she's one of my best friends. I'm so lucky to work with her every day. And she is, you know, a force of nature. There's no challenge that's too big for her. And yeah, I'm really privileged to get to work with her. But one of her massive strengths, two of her massive strengths actually that I'll highlight, are that she has a background in thinking about habit forming products. And one thing that so many users have resonated with is that we are using technology to build habits around something good, like making an impact and making it easier for people to have habits around that, which is something they've always wanted, versus technology is often used to create habits that we're then all trying to break. So Alex brings such deep product knowledge that's been so invaluable. And two is she's so good because she was recruited early at Tinder at interfacing with senior non-technical stakeholders that, you know, I bring her in now as we work together on pitching large B2B enterprise clients. And she is really great at honing in on, okay, this is your concern. This is how we can test it in a proof of concept. This is how we can scale it. So I'm so lucky. I hitched my wagon to her star. That's what I say all the time.
Great. And how did you two first meet each other?
Well, this is actually a really funny story. The first time we ever met in person was in a parking lot of a Sears. You gotta have like the clickbaity headline. But so the background is I was at McKinsey very excited about this business concept. I was listening to podcasts, reading articles. How do you find a technical co-founder? And all the conventional wisdom out there was like, if you're a non-technical person and you have a business idea, go join a startup, organically befriend an engineer, and 3 years from now, once you guys are really good friends, or start a company together, follow them and start a company that they want to start. So all the conventional wisdom pointed to the fact that this was going to be not a viable option. But I actually am really proud of the way that it panned out because I've met one of the most important people in my life, through it. Basically, I did a few things. One is I was harassing everybody in my life, like I mentioned, saying, who are the engineers you know? Can I talk to them to see if they know anyone? So if you're an aspiring founder, I found that to be the best approach. Even if you actually want to pitch the person you're talking to, don't tell them that you're pitching them. Tell them that you're pitching them in case they know anybody else that could be a good fit. And I think the evaluative mindset is different. People will get on the phone with you who may otherwise not consider themselves open to new opportunities. And then you may be able to get them so excited that they suddenly are. But the other thing was I didn't have a ton of proof points. So if I presented what we were building live to someone, they could then say, rather than just forwarding a blurb, they could say, hey, you got to talk to this person. What they're building is really cool. And then through friends of friends, basically, one of my friends knew one of Alex's friends who worked with her at Tinder. And that mutual friend, my friend Ryan, knew Linda, who introduced me to Alex. But along the way, and then at that point, I had a technical advisor vet a code sample. And that told me initially what I needed to know in terms of technical ability. Along the way, I met 6 people actually who wanted to be the co-founder of Beam. And the technical advisor weeded that group down to 4, saying, you know, these 2 people are out of the running. Then from there, I had a serious conversation with them, understanding what their motivations were about starting this company. Some people said, I always wanted to start a company that I could sell to Facebook, and I feel like we could do that with this. And to me, that wasn't the right motivation. We are building a $1 billion company that's going to shift billions to nonprofits, and we're not going to achieve a massive successful outcome if that's your only motivation for doing it. And 3 is then, so Alex said, like, I realized her motivations and mine were so deeply aligned. We wanted to build something massively impactful that could shift capitalism in a direction that's more inclusive. And lastly, we contracted together for 3 months and we realized our work style was really compatible. But then, so we were doing basically long distance, FaceTiming from New York to LA, that we decided eventually after 3 months to meet in San Francisco in person. The first time ever was in a parking lot of Sears because at that point, we actually had someone who wanted to do press about us and we didn't have a founder headshot together. And that was the cheapest place we could get photos taken. So RIP Sears, thank you for being part of our origin story.
Amazing. No, thanks for sharing. And for you, can you talk a little bit about how did you land your Ulu Ventures, Hearst Lab, like so many amazing funds backing Beam Impact. How did you land that first institutional check?
Yeah. So I would say on the whole, the way I'd summarize our seed experience is that the most effective ways of connecting with VCs for us were introductions from portfolio founders and introductions from VCs that were not a fit for whatever reason. It wasn't the right stage alignment, it wasn't the right thesis alignment, but they believed in us and they recommended us to other people. So if you're out there and you're thinking, I don't have a network where I know VCs, I would not recommend. I mean, people have different takes on this. I personally don't think that there's strong return on time in cold emailing VCs. I do think there's strong return on time in cold emailing founders. So my first step actually to take a step back was I looked at companies that were somewhat similar to ours and who had invested in them. And then I looked at the rest of their portfolio and I looked for companies that were maybe one step ahead of us. So, they'd raised a Series A or seed round already. And then I cold emailed those founders or requested an intro to them if I had a second degree connection, and said, I would love to, this is very inspiring, your founder trajectory. I'm looking to talk to this fund. I'd love to connect with you and get your advice. Founders pay it forward to other people who've done this for them. So they talked to me, they introed me to the fund. Once, we had proven ourselves in that conversation. And then sometimes those funds were not always the right fit, but they recommended us to other funds.
Awesome. And how was it to get that first check? Who was the first lead?
The first lead at the first term sheet we got we ended up in the very fortunate position where we were oversubscribed. So we didn't end up moving forward with the first check that we got, although we're very grateful for it. So yeah, since we're not working together, I won't name names. But yeah, it was that process and having other conversations going in parallel led to a lot of chips falling once we got that first term sheet.
Got it. Amazing. And where do you talked about Beam Impact becoming a $1 billion business. So right now, what does that look like in terms of next steps? So people can go on your platform and they can, you can engage with different brands through Beam Impact. How do you all get there? What's next for Beam Impact?
Yeah, definitely. So I can first speak more to our business model and how we make money and why it works for brands. And then I can speak to how we go from where we are to where we'll be through that business model. So we have two channels out of the gate. I alluded to this earlier on. We have a native app, which showcases the ecosystem of all the brands we work with. And right now, it's B2B2C as a company. So consumers can download our native app and filter for causes that matter to them and discover brands that are supporting those causes, as well as learn more about their business practices and how that maps to where they're giving. It was also our go-to-market strategy preliminary, our native app. Our second channel is our integration, which embeds our experience directly in our partners' checkout flow. But first, I'll speak to the native app and why it was our go-to-market. We are creating a new paradigm of loyalty. And it's so obvious if you look at the brands that win with Gen Y and Z, that the way to do so is to connect with them authentically over shared purpose. If you get Nike with the Kaepernick campaign and Glossier with their gender inclusivity and body positivity messaging, it's so clear that that's the way to win. We are the first and leading player in this space, in bringing purpose-driven marketing to the marketing space as a player, as a software as a service player, rather. And we wanted to prove it out in a way that was low lift for partners. So we said, there's no integration time needed in your product roadmap. We'll put you on this native app. You can get some of your customers to download it. We'll talk to them, get them to download it, and let's see if it changes behavior. When it did change behavior, we saw customers spending 20% more, coming twice as often per month. we said to them, let's scale this and embed this directly in your checkout flow. Let's align our incentives. I want to tell everyone, shop at your website and use Beam, and so do you. We don't want to send them to 2 different destinations. So at that point, we built an integration, which embeds the Beam experience in our partners' checkout flows. So the way that works is as you're checking out, you select a nonprofit in cart, and then you can track your impact on your order confirmation towards real goals, like at funding a college readiness course for 10 formerly incarcerated people. And again, we're seeing that actually does additional things. It lifts cart to checkout conversion by 10% because people are really emotionally invested. They want to be part of this and they want to finish their purchase. They feel less guilty about adding more to their cart when they know that their dollars are going somewhere good. That's why they spend more. And they're so invested in completing those goals. That's why they keep coming back more and more often. Our partners get emails saying, hey, I've been to Dos Toros 6 times this week. I'm only 60% of the way to my goal. Can I just give my own money and get there faster? So it really gets them hooked on the idea of positive impact. So we've now established that we can drive industry-leading loyalty outcomes. We will be the leading way to drive values-based relationships for Gen Y and Z. The way we're doing that, the way we're going to through a flywheel that connects our B2B integration and our B2C native app. So when people use our integration, we can contact them with a transactional email and say, thanks for supporting sustainability. Download our native app to discover other brands supporting the sustainability as well. This brand is part of a leading network of brands that are supporting sustainability. So customers download our native app and increasingly are trying multiple brands in our network really quickly. What we're discovering is there are really interesting pathways in terms of which journeys customers are likely to take, from one brand to another, and which personal and purchase attributes are most predictive of their values preference. So if I'm making a large transaction, we see that people really want to support local homelessness, to concentrate their impact for people nearby, and they feel a responsibility. But at the same time, those same people are supporting climate change every day when they're making a purchase. So the way for us to win is we're getting smarter and smarter at understanding which customers are most likely to be the best customers for which brands and why. So we are applying machine learning to get smarter at facilitating discovery as our platform grows, and telling these customers, you should be trying these brands, and telling brands, these are the customers you should be talking to. They share your values, they spend 20% more than your average ticket, and they're very likely trying new apparel brands for the first time. So the way for us to scale is to get more B2B partners on our platform, which we're doing at a really fast rate now, and converting more and more of those users and optimizing our funnel to get customers to download our native app and continue to explore new ways to make an impact within our community.
Great. And when you're looking at that, what's been in building thus far? What do you consider one of the biggest challenge that you faced thus far?
Well, COVID-19 was a big challenge.
No more Panera buying, right? That's the, yeah.
Well, honestly, we've always viewed Beam as our vision was to be an omni-channel solution for anytime you're buying something. We can give you the most impactful option. We are a tool for substitution, not addition necessarily in spending. So if you're buying apparel, we can show you the most impactful option. If you're buying coffee, etc. We launched in brick and mortar retail and restaurants because that would be the fastest feedback loop on our value proposition of getting people to come more often. High purchase frequency categories where people are coming 10 times a month, it only takes a month or two to see how much more we can move the needle. But our vision always, it was part of our seed deck a year and a half ago or more, to build this integration and launch into other channels. So, COVID definitely hit us hard initially, as we were primarily working with, exclusively pretty much at that point, working with restaurant partners and a brick and mortar focused retailer, IKEA. And what it enabled, though, is it strengthened the need for us on all sides, and it accelerated the development and launch of our most scalable product. And now we're growing faster than ever. So honestly, we serve 3 stakeholders. We serve brands, consumers, and nonprofits. suddenly brands needed a way to show consumers we are standing by communities in need. They also, a lot of direct to consumer brands were experiencing an influx of new consumers as people were shopping online for the first time or more often than ever, and they needed creative tools to retain them. So that compounded the need for a purpose-driven retention solution, and we're the leader in that space. Consumers were more anxious than ever to make a bigger impact. They really wanted to do something positive to support communities in pain, and nonprofits obviously had a bigger need than they ever did. So we experienced a ton of revenue loss, so like 95%. And that was challenging, but we put our heads down. We immediately hired a contractor to start building our web integration and say, like, this needs to happen in the world right now. And our investors really believed in our trajectory and our growth and everything that we had proven out. And when we told them, when we shared this narrative, that, hey, this is ultimately strengthening the need for us, they doubled down and they backed us, and they invested some buffer for us to be able to get through. So, I mean, that was definitely, I would say initially I just put my head down about what do we need to do. We got to work, we got the funding. At that point, I then was starting to pitch brands on our integration before it existed. So our team, our engineering team, was doing an amazing job of building it as fast as they could. And I was telling the world how amazing it would be. And so eventually we actually, I didn't know, this was the thing. We've been growing so fast that I didn't really know what good looked like. Just scrambling, and we knew we have to move faster all the time. And then what we ultimately happened, we launched the integration in September, that it actually was outperforming our projections for sales lift because consumers were so excited about this opportunity to make an impact. We were right that the need was stronger. And within 90 days, we had launched with 20 brands. And going into the pandemic, we had 15 brands. We didn't lose any of our partners, but we really grew, and we're continuing to see that. Half of our brands have referred a new brand to us, et cetera. So not to gloss over the definite, Q2, Q3, 2020 madness of like, we gotta make this work. And it launched at the end of Q3, and it's been awesome to see. But it was definitely, the way we got through it was just remembering we are building something that the world needs. And this is something that works. And it's going to, we are going to now know if this is something that is future proof the way that we think it is. And what we've learned is that it is. So that's been a great learning for us.
Well, Viveka, it was great to have you. So for everyone, thank you very much. This was Viveka Hulyalkar. That is, she's the CEO of Beam Impact. You can find their app via the link on the live stream. Thanks for joining us and sharing your story this evening.
Thank you so much.